The morning sky of New Haven glowed orange as its distant sun climbed over the jagged mountains. Tom stood on the cracked concrete platform that once served as a landing pad, his eyes fixed on the horizon. At 53, his face had weathered into deep lines, each one marking another year since Earth had abandoned them. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, running a hand through his gray-streaked hair. Below him, the colony of New Haven spread out in a patchwork of makeshift structures. What had begun as a planned settlement with neat grid patterns had evolved into something more organic. Metal sheets salvaged from the original colony ships formed roofs over walls built from local stone. Solar panels, most cracked but still functioning, dotted the landscape like strange flowers. Tom descended the metal stairs, each step echoing with a dull clang. At the bottom, Mary waited for him with the day's reports. At 45, she served as both the colony's doctor and head of agriculture, two jobs no one person should have to do. "We lost another field to the rust beetles," she said without greeting. "That's 3 this month." Tom nodded. "How bad?" "Bad enough. We'll have to cut rations again." She handed him a tablet, one of the few working pieces of original technology they had left. Its screen flickered, the battery held together by salvaged parts and sheer stubbornness. "Council meeting at noon," Tom said. "Bring your recommendations." Mary's eyes hardened. "I'll tell them what I always tell them. We need to move the settlement further north. The soil is better there. And closer to the ghostlands," Tom reminded her. "We've been over this." The ghostlands, a stretch of territory where strange lights appeared at night, and from which hunting parties sometimes didn't return. The colonists avoided it out of both superstition and practical caution. "We can't keep going like this, Tom. Something has to change." Tom didn't answer. They both knew she was right. The colony council gathered in what had once been the command center. Now it served as their meeting hall, school, and on festival days, a place to dance and forget their troubles. 7 people sat around a table made from the hull of a transport vehicle. The metal surface was polished to a shine, one of the small dignities they maintained. "The communication array is failing," said Ben, the colony's chief engineer. His hands were permanently stained with machine oil, fingernails rimmed with black. "I've bypassed the damaged sections, but we're looking at 2 months, maybe 3 before total failure." "Can't you fix it?" asked Lisa, who represented the hunters and security teams. Ben shook his head. "Not without parts we don't have. I've cannibalized everything I can." The room fell silent. The communication array was their last link to the stars, even if no one had answered their calls for decades. "There's more," said Mary, her voice tight. "The sickness has spread to the eastern quarter. 5 new cases yesterday." A murmur ran through the room. The sickness had appeared 3 months ago. Fever followed by a blue-tinged rash and difficulty breathing. Mary had tried everything in their limited medical supplies, but nothing worked. So far, 12 had died. "Do we know what causes it?" Tom asked. "No, without proper equipment." Mary spread her hands in a helpless gesture. Tom rubbed his eyes. 25 years as colony leader had taught him that bad news rarely came alone. "What about the power reserves?" he asked, turning to Ben. "Down to 32%. We're generating enough for basic needs, but the old systems are energy hogs. The communication array alone takes almost 5% of our daily output." Lisa leaned forward. "So we shut it down. No one's listening anyway." "We don't know that," said Paul, the oldest member of the council at 72. He had been just 19 when the colony ships landed. Earth could have recovered by now. They could be looking for us. After 60 years, Lisa scoffed. "They left us to die, old man." "Enough," Tom said. "We need solutions, not arguments." The meeting continued for hours. By its end, they had decided to reduce power to non-essential systems, increase hunting parties to compensate for the lost crops, and establish a quarantine area for the sick. The fate of the communication array remained undecided. Ellie worked late in the technology bay, a repurposed storage unit filled with salvaged equipment. At 26, she had never known Earth, never seen a functioning city, never experienced the luxury of abundant resources. But she had an affinity for the old tech that even Ben respected. She connected another wire to the makeshift circuit board, holding her breath. The screen flickered, then stabilized, showing lines of diagnostic code. Yes, she whispered, pumping her fist in the air. What she was doing wasn't strictly allowed. Power was too precious to waste on pet projects. But Ellie had been dreaming of the stars her whole life, poring over the old star charts and navigation systems whenever she could. The door slid open with a hiss. Ellie jumped, quickly reaching to shut down the screen, but relaxed when she saw it was just Dan, her friend since childhood. "You're still at it?" he asked, setting down a container of food. "Brought you dinner." "Thanks." She took it gratefully. "And yes, I'm still at it. Look." She pulled up the scan she'd been running, a sweep of nearby space using the colony's old orbital sensors. Most were broken, but she'd managed to get 3 working by routing power through alternative channels. "What am I looking at?" Dan asked, squinting at the screen. "Probably nothing," Ellie admitted. "But I swear I picked up something last week. A signal or energy reading that wasn't there before." Dan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ellie, you know there's nothing out there. Not for us anyway." "Maybe. But what if there is?" She looked up at him, eyes bright with a hope he hadn't seen in a long time. "What if someone's coming?" Later that night, Tom stood alone in the observatory. The glass dome, once clear, was now clouded with age and dust, but still offered a view of New Haven's star-filled sky. He came here often, especially after difficult days. In his pocket was a small communicator, the personal device he carried from Earth. It had stopped working decades ago, but he kept it as a reminder. A reminder of promises made and broken. "We'll send support ships within the year," the Earth Admiral had said. "This is just the beginning of humanity's greatest expansion." Then came reports of tensions on Earth, resource wars, and finally, silence. Complete, devastating silence. "Tom." Mary's voice came from the doorway. "Council's waiting for your decision on the array." He didn't turn around. "Tell them we keep it running. Full power. That will drain our reserves faster. If winter comes early." "I know the risks," he cut her off. "But we need to be able to call for help if the sickness gets worse." Mary stepped beside him, looking up through the dome. "Do you really think anyone's still out there, listening?" Tom didn't answer immediately. His eyes traced the constellations they had named themselves, stars unknown to Earth astronomers. "I don't know," he finally said. "But I'm not ready to give up on humanity just yet." As they stood there, a shooting star blazed across the sky, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Neither of them knew it wasn't a shooting star at all, but a scout ship, the first human vessel to enter their system in 60 years. The fleet had finally come. Ellie couldn't sleep. The readings she had detected earlier kept playing in her mind. She got up from her bed, a simple cot in the small room she called home, and slipped on her boots. The metal floor was cold against her feet as she made her way through the silent corridors of the colony. Most of New Haven was asleep at this hour. The night shift guards nodded to her as she passed. They knew her habits by now, the young technician who worked when others rested. The technology bay was dark when she entered, illuminated only by the blinking lights of various machines. Ellie didn't turn on the main lights. Power was too precious to waste, and her eyes were used to working in the dim glow of screens. She sat at her console and powered it up, watching as the old system slowly came to life. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up the sensor readings from the previous day. "Come on, show me I'm not crazy," she whispered to herself. The screen flickered, data streaming across it. Then she saw it again, an energy spike in the outer sensor grid. Something was out there, moving through the system. something that didn't match any natural phenomenon she had studied in the old databases. Ellie's heart raced. She needed to confirm this, but she needed help. Marcus was the oldest engineer in the colony. At 78, he had been one of the original colonists, a junior technician on the first ship. Now his hands shook with age, but his mind remained sharp. He wasn't happy about being woken before dawn. "This better be important, girl," he grumbled as Ellie led him to the technology bay. "It is, Marcus. I promise." Ellie couldn't keep the excitement from her voice. When she showed him the readings, Marcus's irritation vanished. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the old glasses perched on his nose. "Have you told anyone else about this?" he asked, his voice suddenly serious. Ellie shook her head. "Just you. I needed someone who would understand what we're looking at." Marcus nodded slowly. "Smart girl. The council would just panic. And for what? This could be anything. Space debris, a comet we haven't cataloged." "But you don't think it is, do you?" Ellie asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. He worked the controls, enhancing the signal, applying filters that Ellie hadn't known existed in the system. "There," he finally said, pointing at the screen. "That pattern. That's not natural." The signal now appeared as a series of pulses, too regular to be random. "Is it a message?" Ellie whispered. "Maybe." Marcus scratched his beard. "But we need more. We need to boost our sensors." Ellie's face fell. "How? We barely have enough power to keep the essential systems running." Marcus smiled, a glint in his eye. "Who said anything about using the official power grid?" Tom found them 4 hours later, after the morning alarm had sounded and Ellie hadn't reported for her shift. The scene in the technology bay stopped him in his tracks. Marcus and Ellie had dismantled 3 power units and rigged them to a tangle of wires leading to the sensor array controls. The old man was beneath a console, his legs sticking out as he worked on something, while Ellie monitored readings on 2 screens. "What in the name of Earth is going on here?" Tom demanded. Ellie jumped, but Marcus simply slid out from under the console, wiping his hands on a rag. "About time you showed up," the old engineer said. "We've got something to show you." Tom looked at the makeshift setup, anger building. "You've diverted power without authorization. Do you have any idea?" "We used personal power cells," Ellie interrupted. "From our own quarters. We didn't touch the colony grid." This gave Tom pause. Personal power was strictly rationed, but was considered private property. Colonists could use their allotment as they saw fit. "Fine," he said after a moment. "What was so important you had to do, whatever this is?" Marcus gestured to the main screen. "Show him, Ellie." Ellie typed a command, and the screen changed to show a star map of their system. A series of dots moved across it, approaching their planet. "What am I looking at?" Tom asked, his anger fading into confusion. "Ships," Marcus said simply. "At least 7 of them, maybe more." Tom stared at the screen, not fully comprehending. "Ships, that's impossible. No one knows we're here." "Someone does now," Ellie said. "And they're headed straight for us." The news spread through the colony like wildfire. By midday, everyone knew that ships had been detected approaching New Haven. The council chamber was packed, with colonists crowding the doorway, straining to hear. "Are they from Earth?" someone shouted. "Could be aliens," another voice suggested, causing a ripple of fear. Tom raised his hands for silence. "We don't know who they are or what they want. The only thing we know for certain is that they'll reach our orbit in approximately 3 days. What do we do?" Lissa asked, her hand resting on the knife at her belt. "We have no defenses against spaceships." Ben, who had been examining Ellie and Marcus's data, looked up. "We might not have proper defenses, but we're not helpless. We still have the old mining lasers in storage." "Those were meant for cutting rock, not fighting battles," Mary pointed out. "True, but with some modifications." Ben trailed off, his mind already working on the problem. Tom nodded. Get on it. Lisa, I want security teams doubled. Everyone trained in hunting gets a weapon. Paul, take inventory of all supplies. We may need to evacuate to the caves if things go bad. The council broke up, each member rushing to their assigned tasks. Only Tom remained, staring at the projected image of the approaching ships. Mary came to stand beside him. You think it's them, don't you? Earth has finally remembered us. I don't know what to think, Tom admitted. It's been 60 years. Why come now? On the edge of the colony, near the old landing pads, Ellie worked with Marcus to set up a more powerful scanning array. They had salvaged parts from old satellites, creating a makeshift dish that now pointed toward the stars. If they're trying to communicate, we'll hear them, Marcus said, connecting the final wire. Ellie nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. All her life, she had dreamed of the stars, of Earth, a place she had never seen except in old pictures. Now that contact might finally be happening, she felt strangely afraid. What if they're not friendly? She asked quietly. Marcus paused in his work. Then we deal with that when it comes. But Ellie, consider this, whoever they are, they've crossed the void between stars. If they wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't need to get so close. The scanner hummed to life, its dish beginning a slow rotation. Ellie checked the readings, making sure everything was functioning. Then she heard it, a faint signal, growing stronger by the second. Not random noise, but a deliberate transmission. Marcus, she called, her voice shaking. I'm picking something up. The old engineer hurried over, pressing a headset to his ear. His eyes widened as he listened. What is it? Ellie asked, desperate to know. What are they saying? Marcus removed the headset slowly, his hands trembling not with age but with emotion. It's in English, he whispered. They're hailing the New Haven colony. Who are they? Ellie pressed. Marcus looked up at the sky, where the first stars were becoming visible as dusk fell. They call themselves the Restoration Fleet. They've come from Earth. In the distance, the colony alarms began to sound. The colony of New Haven had never been so alert. Every able person stood at their post, eyes turned toward the sky. 2 days had passed since Ellie and Marcus received the transmission from the Restoration Fleet. Now, the moment of truth had arrived. Tom stood on the old landing pad, the same spot where he often came to watch the sunrise. But today, he wasn't looking at the horizon. His gaze was fixed upward, where 7 massive ships hung in the morning sky, visible even in daylight, dark shapes against the pale blue. Beside him stood Lisa with her security team, each armed with whatever weapons the colony could provide, mostly hunting rifles and the few remaining energy pistols from the original mission. They looked small and inadequate in the shadow of the ships above. They've been in orbit for 6 hours, Lisa said, checking her old military watch. Why haven't they done anything? They've done plenty, Tom replied. They've scanned us, monitored our communications. They're assessing us. As if in response to his words, a smaller craft detached from the largest ship. It began a slow descent toward the landing pad. Tom activated his communicator. All posts, stand ready. First contact is imminent. No one fires unless I give the order. The landing craft was unlike anything the colonists had seen. Sleek in silver, it moved with a grace that made their own ships, long since cannibalized for parts, seem like relics from a forgotten age, which, Tom realized, they were. A hush fell over the gathering crowd as the craft touched down, sending up a small cloud of dust. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, a door slid open, and a ramp extended to the ground. 5 figures emerged, walking slowly down the ramp. They wore dark blue uniforms with insignias the colonists didn't recognize. 4 of them carried weapons, not drawn, but visible at their sides. The 5th, a tall woman with short gray hair, walked ahead of the others, empty-handed. She stopped a few paces from Tom and his group. Up close, Her uniform showed signs of rank that even the isolated colonists could recognize. A leader, then. "I am Admiral Reed of the Earth Fleet Vessel Restoration," she said, her voice clear in the silent air. "We come in peace to New Haven Colony." Tom stepped forward. "I am Tom Miller, leader of New Haven. We welcome you, though I must admit, we had given up hope of seeing anyone from Earth again." Admiral Reed's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or sadness. "May we speak somewhere more comfortable?" she asked, gesturing to the hot sun overhead. "We have much to discuss." The colony's meeting hall had never hosted such a gathering. The council sat on one side of the table, the visitors on the other. Only Admiral Reed and two others, a man she introduced as Dr. James and a younger woman named Lieutenant Gray, had joined the meeting. The other two remained outside with their ship. 60 years, Marcus said, breaking the awkward silence that had fallen after introductions. 60 years we've been waiting. An entire lifetime. Admiral Reed nodded slowly. The war lasted longer than anyone expected. Earth was devastated, our space program destroyed. It's taken us decades to rebuild, to develop the technology to reach this far again. "But you knew we were here," Mary said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Reed admitted. "The original colony missions were never forgotten, just beyond our reach. Until now." Tom studied the Admiral's face. There was something she wasn't saying. "Why come back now, after all this time? What's changed?" Before Reed could answer, Dr. James spoke up. "We understand you're facing a medical crisis, a new illness." Mary looked surprised. "How did you know that?" "Your communications," Lieutenant Gray explained. "We intercepted them days ago. Your descriptions of the symptoms were quite clear." Mary glanced at Tom, who nodded for her to continue. She described the blue-tinged rash, the fever, the breathing difficulties that characterized the sickness. Dr. James listened intently, occasionally making notes on a small device. When Mary finished, he looked troubled. "I need to examine your sick," he said. Immediately, the quarantine area had been set up in what was once a storage facility. 12 beds held the current victims of the sickness. 5 more had died in the past week. Dr. James moved from bed to bed, using equipment that seemed magical to the colonists. It took readings without touching the patients, analyzed blood with a simple light, and displayed results on a portable screen. Mary watched him work, torn between professional curiosity and territorial protectiveness over her patients. "This isn't natural," Dr. James finally said, reviewing his findings. "This disease was engineered." The words hit Mary like a physical blow. Engineered? By whom? "We haven't had contact with anyone in 60 years. James glanced at Admiral Reed, who had been standing silently by the door. She gave a small nod. "That's not entirely true," James said quietly. "You haven't been alone out here." Back in the meeting hall, the council listened in stunned silence as Admiral Reed explained what Earth had discovered. "We call them the Void Collective," she said. "A group of alien species united by one belief, that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to spread among the stars." "Aliens?" Ben whispered, the word foreign on his tongue. In 60 years of isolation, the idea of non-human intelligence had faded from everyday thought to the realm of old stories. Reed continued, "They attacked Earth shortly after your colony ships left. That's what started the war. But they've been watching you too, all this time." "Watching us?" Lisa's hand moved to her weapon. "Why?" Lieutenant Gray answered, "You were an experiment to them. They wanted to see how humans would adapt when cut off, whether we'd survive or destroy ourselves. They'd been observing you from a hidden base somewhere in this system. The ghostlands," Ellie said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. The strange lights, the hunting parties that disappeared. It wasn't superstition. Tom felt cold despite the room's warmth. "And the sickness. They did that too." Dr. James nodded grimly. "A test of your medical capabilities, most likely. to see how you'd respond to a threat you couldn't understand or fight. But why come back now? Tom pressed, returning to his original question. After 60 years, why is Earth suddenly interested in a forgotten colony? Admiral Reed's face hardened. Because the war never truly ended, it just went cold. Now it's heating up again, and we need every human settlement we can find. We're taking you home. Home. Paul's voice cracked with emotion. To Earth. For those who want to go, Reed said, or we can help rebuild this colony properly, with modern technology and supplies. A murmur ran through the council members. The offer seemed too good to be true after decades of struggle. Tom sensed there was more. What's the catch, Admiral? Reed's eyes met his. The catch, Mr. Miller, is that once the Void Collective realizes we found you, they'll come, and they won't be content with watching anymore. As if to punctuate her words, an alarm sounded from Lieutenant Gray's equipment. She checked it, her face paling. Admiral, she said urgently, we're detecting ships entering the system. They're not ours. The first contact with Earth had barely begun, and already time was running out. Chaos erupted in the meeting hall. Council members shouted questions while Admiral Reed spoke urgently into her communicator. Lieutenant Gray's fingers flew across her device, tracking the approaching ships. Everyone, quiet. Tom's voice cut through the noise. The room fell silent. Admiral, what are we dealing with? Reed's face was grim. 3 Void Collective vessels, approaching fast. They must have detected our fleet. She turned to Lieutenant Gray. How long? 2 hours, maybe less, the young officer replied. They're using their faster drives. Tom looked around at his people, farmers, engineers, and hunters who had never faced anything like this. What can we do? We need to evacuate as many people as possible, Reed said. My shuttle can take 30. I'll call down more. And the rest of us? Lisa asked. Reed hesitated. The Restoration has weapons that can target their ships from orbit, but if they land troops, she didn't need to finish. Ground combat against an alien force was not something the colonists were prepared for. We'll fight, Lisa said firmly. This is our home. Tom nodded. Lisa's right. We can't all leave, and we won't abandon our home. But children and the sick should go first. Agreed, Reed said. Gray, contact the fleet. Tell them to begin evacuation procedures and move to defensive positions. As Gray relayed the orders, Dr. James approached Mary. We need to move your patients immediately. I have treatments on my ship that might help them. Mary nodded, already making mental lists of what they would need. Tom turned to Ben. Those mining lasers you mentioned, how quickly can they be set up? Ben scratched his beard. With enough hands, a few hours. But Tom, they're not weapons. They won't do much against real ships. They don't need to destroy ships, Tom said. They just need to give us a fighting chance if those things land. The colony became a flurry of activity. Evacuation zones were established, with the most vulnerable colonists directed to the landing pads where Earth shuttles would arrive. Meanwhile, teams led by Ben worked to mount the old mining lasers on buildings and walls around the colony's perimeter. Ellie found herself working with Marcus in the technology bay, repurposing old communication equipment. What exactly are we trying to do? She asked, connecting wires as Marcus directed. Their ships use advanced cloaking technology, Marcus explained, not looking up from his work. The fleet detected them because they have advanced sensors. But if these aliens land and use personal cloaking devices, we'll be fighting blind. And this will help us see them. Ellie gestured to the device they were building. Marcus smiled. Not exactly. But it might disrupt their cloaking fields. The Admiral provided the frequency patterns they use. A loud boom shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. They're here, Marcus said quietly. From the observatory, Tom watched the battle unfold in the sky above. The human fleet had formed a protective barrier around the planet, their ships firing weapons that streaked across space like lightning. The Void Collective vessels, dark, angular shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, weave between the human ships, returning fire. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Reed said, joining him at the window. She had returned to her flagship briefly, but had come back down to coordinate the ground defense. I never imagined I would see space battles outside of the old movies, Tom admitted. Reed's communicator beeped. Her face hardened as she listened to the report. What is it? Tom asked. They've deployed landing craft, Reed said. Small ones, hard to track. At least 3, maybe more. They'll be here within minutes. Tom activated his own communicator. All defense teams to positions. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Lisa and her hunters took position behind makeshift barriers at the colony's main entrance. Most had never fired their weapons at anything more dangerous than the 6-legged deer that roamed the forests. Now they waited for an enemy they couldn't even imagine. Remember, Lisa called out, short, controlled bursts. Don't waste ammunition. A sound like tearing metal filled the air. Looking up, the defenders saw a dark shape descending through the clouds, trailing smoke. Is it one of ours? Someone asked. Lisa shook her head. Fleet ships are silver. That's one of theirs. The alien craft crashed just beyond the colony's perimeter, disappearing into the dense forest. For a moment, all was quiet. Then came sounds of movement from the trees, not the familiar noises of forest animals, but something deliberate and coordinated. They're coming, Lisa whispered, raising her rifle. The first of the Void Collective emerged from the forest edge. They were tall, with bodies that seemed to shift between solid and vapor. Their armor was black, absorbing light, making them difficult to focus on. Where faces should be were smooth, reflective masks. One of the hunters fired in panic. The shot went wide, hitting a tree. The response was immediate. The aliens raised weapons that hummed with energy, and the ground before the barricade erupted in dirt and flame. Hold steady. Lisa shouted over the noise. Wait for clear shots. The battle had begun. On the other side of the colony, Ellie and Marcus rushed to complete their device. The sounds of fighting grew louder, energy weapons discharging, the deeper boom of the mining lasers firing, and occasionally, human screams. It's ready, Marcus finally said, connecting the last component. The device, a jumble of salvaged parts and new technology provided by the Earth fleet, hummed to life. How do we know if it works? Ellie asked. We don't, Marcus admitted. Not until we try it. He pressed the activation sequence. The device emitted a high-pitched whine that made Ellie's teeth ache. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then her communicator crackled. This is Lisa. Something's happening. The aliens, they're visible. The shifting effect is gone. Ellie and Marcus exchanged triumphant looks. It worked, Ellie cried. Their celebration was cut short as the door to the technology bay burst open. One of the aliens stood there, its mask reflecting their shocked faces. The cloaking effect was gone, revealing a body covered in segmented armor, with limbs that bent at odd angles. Marcus pushed Ellie behind him as the alien raised its weapon. A shot rang out. The alien staggered, then fell. Behind it stood Admiral Reed, a smoking pistol in her hand. The disruptor is working, she said, but we need more. Can you build another? Marcus nodded. With help, yes. Good, Reed said, because we just got word. They found it. Found what? Ellie asked. The observation post, Reed explained. The place they've been watching you from. It's in the area you call the ghostlands, and it's much larger than we thought. This wasn't just surveillance. They've been building something here, right under your noses. Building what? Marcus asked. Reed's expression was grim. We don't know yet, but whatever it is, they're willing to fight very hard to protect it. Outside, the battle raged on, human and alien fighting for control of a world that neither truly owned. And somewhere in the ghostlands, a secret waited to be discovered, one that might change the course of the war. Dawn broke over New Haven, revealing the scars of battle. Buildings smoldered, barriers lay in ruins, and the once neat streets were littered with debris. But the colony still stood. Tom surveyed the damage from the roof of the council building. The night had been the longest of his life. Wave after wave of alien attackers had come, only to be repelled by the combined forces of the colonists and the Earth Fleet soldiers. The mining lasers, though not designed for combat, had proven surprisingly effective once the aliens' cloaking technology was disrupted. They pulled back for now, Admiral Reed said, joining him. Her uniform was torn and dirty, a bandage wrapped around her arm where an alien weapon had grazed her. But they'll regroup. How many did we lose? Tom asked quietly. 6 of my people, 9 colonists. Reed's voice was steady, but Tom could hear the weight of responsibility in it. The evacuation ships got away safely. Your children and sick are aboard the Restoration now, receiving treatment. Tom nodded, finding some comfort in that. What happens next? Reed looked toward the distant mountains that marked the edge of the ghostlands. We find out what they've been building. The council room had become a war room. Maps were spread across the table, markers indicating alien positions and human defenses. Tom stood with Admiral Reed, Lisa, and Lieutenant Gray, planning their next move. Our scouts report heavy activity here, Lisa said, pointing to a valley deep in the ghostlands. Strange lights, energy readings off the charts. Lieutenant Gray nodded. Fleet scans confirm it. Whatever they've built, it's big and it's powerful. And they're defending it with everything they have. Could it be a weapon? Tom asked. Possibly, Reed said. Or a communication array or a gateway for reinforcements. We need to find out before we can counter it. The door opened and Ellie rushed in, out of breath. It worked. Marcus's new disruptors. They cover twice the area of the first one. Reed smiled. Good work. We'll need them for what comes next. Which is? Tom asked. Reed's expression became serious. A strike team. Small, fast, able to get in and out of the ghostlands without being detected. We need to see what they're hiding. I know those lands better than anyone, Lisa said. My hunters and I have tracked game there for years, even with the stories of ghosts. I should go too, Ellie said. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise. I understand the disruptor technology better than anyone except Marcus, and he's too old for this kind of mission. Tom wanted to object, to protect the young woman who represented the colony's future. But he recognized the determination in her eyes, the same look he'd seen in the mirror for decades as he fought to keep his people alive. It's settled then, Admiral Reed said. Lisa, choose your best hunters. Ellie will join with the disruptor. I'll send my best tactical officer, Alex, and 2 Marines. You leave in an hour. The ghostlands deserve their name. Mist clung to the ground, swirling around the trees whose branches seemed to reach out like grasping hands. Strange rock formations cast shadows that moved even when the light didn't change. Lisa led the small team through paths known only to her hunters. Ellie followed closely, carrying the disruptor in a backpack. Alex, the fleet's tactical officer, used advanced scanning equipment to track energy signatures. We're getting close, Alex whispered after several hours of silent travel. Energy readings are spiking. They crested a ridge and dropped to the ground, looking down into a valley that none of them had expected. Below them stood a massive structure, partly built into the mountain itself. It pulsed with an eerie blue light, the same shade as the rash caused by the engineered disease. Ships came and went from landing pads, and alien figures moved with purpose around the facility. "What is it?" one of the hunters whispered. Alex adjusted his scanner. It's a portal. A gateway." "To where?" Lisa asked. "I don't know. but the energy signatures match wormhole technology we've encountered before. Ellie studied the facility. Look there, those towers around the perimeter. They're projecting some kind of field. A cloak, Alex confirmed, hiding this whole valley from standard scans. That's why we never found it before. Lisa's expression hardened. So what's the plan? We can't fight all of them. Alex pointed to a smaller building near the main structure. That looks like a power station, if we can disable it. A whole facility would shut down, Ellie finished. Exactly, Alex said. And without power, their portal is useless. Lisa nodded. We go in quiet, set charges, and get out. Simple. None of them believed it would be simple, but they had no choice. Back at the colony, Tom waited anxiously for news. The remaining defenders had fortified their positions, ready for another attack. But the aliens had grown strangely quiet. They know, Marcus said, joining Tom at his lookout post. They know we've sent people to their facility. How can you be sure? Tom asked. Before Marcus could answer, the sky darkened. Looking up, Tom saw 3 massive alien ships descending toward the colony, far larger than the ones they had fought before. That's how, Marcus said grimly. Tom grabbed his communicator. All positions, prepare for attack. This is not a drill. Admiral Reed's voice came through. Tom, we've lost contact with the strike team. You're on your own until the fleet can reposition. Tom looked at the approaching ships, then at his people rushing to their positions. After 60 years of abandonment, they had learned to survive against impossible odds. They would not surrender now. We'll hold, he promised. In the ghostlands, the strike team moved silently toward the power station. They had avoided patrols, using the disruptor only when necessary to conserve its power. There, Alex whispered, pointing to an access panel on the building's exterior. That's our way in. As they approached, an alarm suddenly blared. Lights flashed across the facility. They've spotted us, Lisa shouted, raising her weapon. No, Alex said, checking his scanner. It's not us. Something else has triggered their security systems. Ellie looked up at the sky above the main facility. A swirling vortex of energy was forming, growing larger by the second. The portal, she gasped. They're activating it. Change of plans, Lisa decided. We hit them now, while they're distracted. They broke cover, running toward the power station. Alien guards spotted them and opened fire, energy bolts scorching the ground at their feet. Ellie activated the disruptor at full power. The effect was immediate. Aliens who had been partially cloaked became fully visible, their movements slower as the energy field interfered with their technology. Lisa and the hunters provided covering fire while Alex and the Marines reached the power station. Within minutes, they had placed their charges and set the timer. 30 seconds. Alex shouted. Run. They fled as fast as they could. Behind them, the charges detonated with a thunderous boom. The power station erupted in flames, and a cascade of failures spread through the alien facility. Lights flickered and died, equipment shut down, and the portal above, now halfway open, began to collapse in on itself. The strike team didn't stop to watch. They ran for the ridge, pursued by enraged aliens. But without their technology, the aliens were at a disadvantage in the forest terrain that Lisa and her hunters knew so well. At the colony, the battle raged. The mining lasers fired constantly, slowing the alien advance but not stopping it. Tom fought alongside his people, defending the home they had built from nothing. Then suddenly, the alien attack faltered. Their weapons lost power. Their coordinated movements became chaotic, and their ships, hovering ominously overhead, drifted aimlessly. What's happening? Tom asked, not daring to hope. The strike team, Marcus said, a smile spreading across his face. They did it. 3 days later, Tom stood with Admiral Reed on the rebuilt landing pad. The alien threat had been pushed back, their forces in disarray after the destruction of their portal facility. Fleet scientists were still studying the ruins, learning what they could about the Void Collective's technology. "You have a choice to make," Reed said. "Earth is ready to welcome you back. Or, if you prefer, we can help you rebuild here, make New Haven stronger than ever." Tom looked out over the colony. The buildings showing signs of repair, people moving with purpose, hope visible on faces that had known only struggle for generations. "This is our home," he said simply. "We were left behind once. We won't abandon it now." Reed nodded, understanding. "Then New Haven will become our forward base in this sector. The first line of defense against the Void Collective, and a symbol of humanity's resilience." In the distance, Tom could see Ellie working with fleet engineers, learning from them, teaching them in return. Lisa trained with Marine combat instructors, while Mary collaborated with Dr. James on cures for local diseases. They had been left behind, forgotten by Earth for 60 years. But in that time, they had become something new, something stronger. And now, reunited with the human fleet, they would face whatever came next together. The stars above no longer seemed so distant or cold. They were a promise of a future that finally included them all.